SortOf versus IAmAvely. Now, for those unfamiliar with SortOf, this guy is sort of a big deal. Oh, shut up and just get in the game. That was terrible. Okay, no, seriously though, this guy is very talented. Whoopsie, totally forgot to update the names. But yes, IAmAvely, we've seen him around. We've cast a bunch of his games. He's a very competent player, constantly like at the top leaderboards. I think he even has 1 or 2 smurfs right up at the top of it. SortOf, on the other hand, is... Oh, God, I can't even avoid them. I didn't even want to do this one. I just realized I was going to say it. Is SortOf a badass. He comes from the realm of Starcraft 2. And in that realm, he has proven himself quite the potent force. In fact, looking at his earnings, I think he was close to 100K earned playing StarCraft competitively. And he's been playing, I think, since 2011. So, yeah, 90,000 since 2011. I don't want to think about those numbers because I think it's a bit depressing to think about those numbers because that means you're earning less than a minimum job per year. But he has earned a decent amount as a Westerner in a game that, you know, you don't usually see people getting close to that number outside of the, you know, the Korean region. So he's done reasonably well for himself, but obviously the issue he has is, you know, doing reasonably well for yourself versus, like, the potential to be on top. Well, he measured it. He thought about it. He's like, you know what? I actually think Age of Empires 4 is where it's at. I think that's where the future is going to be. So similar to other craft pros who chose to just throw that game away and come across full-time to AoE4, it looks like he might be doing the same. We'll just have to see in the coming weeks. But he's going to be at least somewhat committed because, of course, with the Golden League, it runs every weekend for 12 weeks total, which means that SortOf is going to have to turn up in some form, in some way, each and every week. Of course, you can choose to not show up a week for whatever your reason may be, but it's to your detriment because you need those points to earn money at the end of everything. So we'll just have to see how he does. Overall, actually, I'd say he's done reasonably well because so far in this round 1 of Golden League, SortOf has made a decent run at it. So he managed to take out State 1-0. He took out Erie 1-0. And I believe in the upper bracket, he had a little bit of a rough start to the day, if I recall correctly, because he had to face off against Lenok. Yes, Lenok 2-0'd him. So you can see that after he took on one of the category like outright best, probably easily top 8 players in the game, he's just bounced back to stomp all of his opponents so far. We'll have to see if he can do the same up against IAmAvely, because as we said, IAmAvely, although he hasn't got the same level of money earned, he hasn't been making bank, making it rain at the strip club 24/7. This guy is a very talented player. He comes from an unknown age of game. Not unknown, but in terms of the esports scene, like, when you say that it has an esports scene, most people's response would be, they have one? Because he's an Age of Mythology player. That's where he earned his stripes. And he's come across, and to be honest, I think he's impressed pretty well. Like, he's not been able to make the ultra-deep runs. Maybe other players, you know, with more credence and name behind them would have. But he has managed to maintain, like, a healthy position at the top of the leaderboards. I believe he got 1 or 2 Smurfs into the top 50 as well. So we should get a really exciting game either way. And it's going to be interesting to see how this opens up, because SortOf, because he's a recent player in the world of Age of Empires, I'm curious to see what he's going to be doing with the Mongols. Because something I've noticed is that a lot of these players that have been coming in last second, like we've seen this with Hazza had this a little bit, I believe Leary was similar as well, they come in with kind of these notions of how Civ should play. And interestingly enough, they play out a lot like the notions that all of us played by when the game first came out, right? Like, oh, this Civ does this Civ must do that. I want to see if SortOf has quickly adapted his Mongol and understood that actually Mongols aren't necessarily about all-inning on the feudal state anymore. They're actually very much more a Castle Age booming Civ, and I think like he may have had enough games to kind of be astutely aware of this. This generation and the opening a stable suggests otherwise, though. So for a start, like, trying to eco-boom into Castle Age instantly with Uvu this far out is risky, but then the interesting part is the play into stables. Something we don't actually see Mongol players do almost ever anymore. It makes sense if you think about his opponent being England because they're going to build Lombos, but overall this will stunt your growth because compared to any other type of unit you could be pushing out, these ones are more pricey, right? If you go for Spearmen, you know, that's 80 resources. If you go for Archers, that's 80 resources. These cost 120 each. So compared to their counterparts, they're going to delay your tech up timing a lot more if you want to reach a critical mass to hold back your opponent or aggress them early on. But early on, sort of moving out. I love this play, actually. The mining camp is sacrificed by Avely, and this is one of the weaknesses. Avely, with this opening, he's decided to do the more standard one that we've been seeing frequently out of English players right now. They sacrifice their quick feudal timing to unlock initial farms and wheelbarrow. The whole idea is you delay going from Dark Age to feudal, but you'll be stronger economically a few minutes after that. The issue with doing this against a Mongol player is if they go for this opening of the stable and they get horsemen across, they get to burn structures for free. And instantly, they're going to be paid back part of the cost of these horsemen because they're going to get 50 food and 50 gold for doing so. And yeah, that isn't going to save you. Avely, whoops. I don't think he realized there. It looked like Avely deleted the structure, but this doesn't stop the Mongol player from getting the resources. So just a little educational lesson. If a Mongol player touches your constructed building and you delete it, they get paid. They make it rain, baby. They get their 50 resources. Just be grateful it's no longer like 100 resources. But yeah, that does mean Avely wastes less of SortOf's time, so he's kind of free to roam around. And we'll see what he wants to do in this situation. For the moment, it looks like he's just going to go on guard mode. There's no kind of exposed eco he can take advantage of. That's one of the benefits of the English is like you tend to always play condensed because you can afford to. So it shouldn't be that he's exposed to Mongol raids before like the 10-minute mark. The concern is whether SortOf is now going to ramp up. Because now that he's got that initial aggression, he's kind of found the bang for buck of producing this horseman. He hasn't been producing more. He stopped at 2. And oh, Avely. This was the weakness we were talking about. But this is where the horsemen are good. Yes, you just lost a sheep. Yes, there's tears in your eyes because we all love sheep. Little babas. But don't worry, punishment is coming. For those that want to see the sheep avenged, that will be the case, as Avely now has to run all the way across the map to try to get safety, but he's up against double horsemen that move quicker than scouts, so over time they will kill off this scout, and that will end up blinding Avely, because English players do not build double scout. In fact, I don't remember the last time I ever saw an English player get a secondary scout. It's very rare we see it these days. Mainly because the English builds become so optimized, right? Like, every little piece matters, so you're just trying to get the most tight timings. I'd say these days, I wouldn't be surprised if it started emerging just because the change of the Abbey Kings build, also the hang around in Dark Age strategy. Like, there's a lot of things that suggest that we could start seeing people get multi-scouts, and I'm definitely for it. There's a lot of value in it. Especially when you're up against Mongols, especially when you could have denied more sheep away from them, and maybe then that sheep assassination mattered, but instead, it matters little. Horsemen able to buffer their opponents away. Heavy damage being done to the longbows. And so far, SortOf has to feel confident about this. He's just denied vision. He can spread his base wider. He understands that Avely can't come in fast, and it looks like he knows that Avely isn't going to come in fast, because if you arrive at 7 minutes in your opponent's base, and he has 3 longbows and spears, you understand what he's doing, right? He has to be eco-booming, and we can see that clearly. We have God vision. We see the numbers. He's going for a quick castle age. This is becoming more popular with the English due to the fact that the window of opportunity with longbow rushes is so short. And the issue with it being short is compounded by the fact that you're doing it with a unit that seems to be short in the leg department. These lads don't move fast. These are old mans with walking sticks. 1.12 tiles makes it very difficult to move units out and keep a critical mass on the front, especially with this many horsemen roaming around from SortOf. SortOf seemingly just decided to sacrifice his tech up. A very surprising choice here, and not an optimal one. Avely, he's still condensed, right? So he shouldn't necessarily get punished for going for this quick castle. We'll have to see, though. Like, if there's a miss micro, SortOf can exploit that fully. And he's moving in to do so right now. Maneuver arrow is about to become available. Avely will peel it back, though. And Horseman, not as impressive as Knights, as you can see. Barely doing 80 damage. Nice turnaround for all the archers as well. Remember, the English peasantry, they do come with a bow to attack with for 5 damage per shot. And the King's Pass on the way. Spears trying to buffer his opponent away. Nice micro there. Avely should get away with this King's Pass, mostly free. A few units might die, but that's about it. And even the wolf is joining in. Oh, the Khan is dead. SortOf missmicroed it. Khan's going to die. He gets the attack speed arrow out, which just does nothing for the horseman. It only works for ranged units. And it means the horseman are going to be pushed back by just 2 spearmen. Castle Age is going to be achieved, but luckily for SortOf, quick on the recovery, look at his numbers. He didn't continue production. He prepped an archery range, but did not use it. It means he won't be far behind on his own Castle Age. In the meantime, he's able to raid through. Horseman, not able to hang around. Once again, the villagers just poking and prodding him away. So Castle Age achieved, but SortOf is about to get the required surplus for his own. And then it becomes a case of step readout efficiency. And I do have doubts on that part, because SortOf only has a single gold vein accessible to him right now. He's going to have to fight out into the midfield. He's going to have to go a long time of idle eco once he moves past this first gold vein. And that might leave him a little bit susceptible to a counterattack from Avely if he doesn't pad himself enough room. I think it's critical that in the next 5 to 10 minutes, SortOf needs to be maintaining this choke around Avely's base. The good news for him is that Avely, because he went Rax and he went for the archery range, or the council rather, he might feel inclined to play slow. That being said, with the Knights in the mixer, Avely, he's the type of player that does like to actively raid. So if he wraps around on the sides at the right time, this could become quite cumbersome for SortOf. Interesting choice to pack up the TC. I think that was a misclick. In fact, I'm certain that was a misclick. There would be no reason to pack up your TC there. So a little bit of inefficiency. We all have it though, right? We look to click one build and we accidentally click two. It's like thinking you're going to have one baby and end up with two, you know? Whoopsie. Happy little accident. This doesn't cost him too much. It does mean a little bit of inefficiency, about 5 seconds of not producing villages there. And the Knight's now a little bit troublesome, but luckily for SortOf, he has horsemen. Naked lads riding on horseback, moving much quicker than that of the Knights. And look at this, Avely. I feel like I haven't got an Avely English game in a while, but I do recall him being one of the first people to regularly do this. He loves getting his relics. Like Avely, he kind of strikes me as a 20 to 30 minute boomer, right? He'd rather just sit back, skip past the stupid frustration of harassment in early feudal and dark age, and move on to the nitty gritty how my economy can sustain huge Zerg army type stage, right? So it makes sense that he's rushed up to castle and now he goes into the monastery. The question is whether he'll be able to grab those relics, because most of them are nowhere near his base. Only this one is kind of safe. The rest are going to be contested, and SortOf does already have these mobile units, and with his own tech up, he can now get into lances himself. So I wouldn't be surprised, actually, if SortOf goes for the prayer tent. A prayer tent works a lot better for him, I feel, in this situation. He's also got spears out in the field. Like, he could easily just repel away these knights, gather up 3 of these relics for free, and then maybe contest on the 4th. In fact, I'm curious what the hell these lads are doing. I guess on a coffee break, they'll resume their march now, so they're looking to wrap around, but you can see that Avely is already wise to what might come. He begins to warm himself in. Sadly, that council hall will prevent the full enclosure across here. So, easy gap to move through. But if you park 1 or 2 spears there, it will prevent your opponent from accessing. Lancer just being betrayed by the natural wildlife at the moment, as everyone is angering the wolves. You know what we need? We actually need a mechanic where if you kill the wolves too often, every time you kill one, there's a chance that a greater, like, dire wolf will spawn. And this is why I'm not allowed to design games anymore. Lancers are in. We'll force a quick garrison. Avely doesn't have room for all of his economy here either. This is the weakness you have right now. You don't have a clear answer to the Lancers. Instead, they just move in Lombos. Easy trades there. And after that, he can shift across to the villages because there's not enough room to garrison them all. And they die fast. Still no textiles. Avely, big mistake here. Didn't anticipate the Lancers, and it means they're going to get their bang for buck. They can easily just snipe a bunch more of these. I mean, yeah, your town centers, they fire double the arrows, but those arrows are reduced by 5 damage per shot. And this won't even be a successful wall. Instead, he just banks the relic, doesn't even try for it. And SortOf not necessarily getting the maximum value here. He could have actually extracted more here, maybe killed 2 or 3 additional villages, and it would have been worthwhile. I think running the Lancers out kind of prematurely like this just costs him. And you will see it now as the Knight will come in to clean him up. So SortOf not quite on point with the micro there. Did at least get the initial value there, right? Sniped out, I believe it was 3 Lombos, got 1, possibly 2 villages. Avely still with a clear lead though. 12 villages up. However, that difference mitigated as you actually have to add on 6 eco to SortOf's force, as he has got 12 working the gold right now, and he's going for the second TC play. He also did go into the prayer tent. So Avely, not the only one comfortable with dragging it out to a late game phase. The difference maker is that SortOf has a lot of troops in the field. Avely is still playing defensive. These monks are going out blind. Nice little AO2 reference there. And they're coming back dead. And you can see it, right? It's just literally because he won't move out of his base. He completes the enclosure, or was on his way to do so now, creating that choke point. But his force still isn't healthy enough, and even if it was, it's man-at-arms. Measly man-at-arms. There you go. Trade 2 horsemen and kill off a monk. I mean, that's a good trade, actually, to be honest with you. No memes needed. Yes, you paid 240 resources for one, but this was 150 resources, and it's the eco-scaling denial. It means you can get more of the relics while your opponent cannot. Khan? Oh no. Avely surrounded him. Sort of. Come on. Looks like his Khan is done with being a warrior. Decided to become a gymnast with that attempt at a somersault. But a little bit of a freebie given over. Sort of not really respecting the value of his Khan. Just throws him away or willy-nilly. Well, the question is now whether Avely strikes. Because the issue with giving away a Khan like that is some opponents will see it as a sign of weakness from which they can exploit, and they'll push forward. It almost feels like SortOf is going to luck out off the back of this, because not only is he raided into Avely's base again, but Avely, every time he takes a slight lead like this, he falls back and turtles more. It means that he's never gaining ground, he's never unlocking a win condition. If his win condition is just to eco boom up, I've got bad news for you. You're in a corner. This is not a safe base. This is merely a prison. And SortOf will exploit that, because he will extend across the map. He has 2 TCs. He has the step readout, able to extract additional gold value, booming you up even faster. And he's getting the surplus of relics as he's almost banked the 3rd one. Avely, slowly moving out, is onto the stone. I think he wants to drop a keep near one of these sacred sites. He needs to establish some control, because when both players play towards the monks like this, the next goal after relics are resolved is the sacred sites, as they gather you passive gold and also unlock a new win condition. And right now, SortOf is in position to utilize that fully. These outposts also getting additional value due to the location of the gold veins means that when he sets them up, he's also protecting his future economy lines. As you can see, the step readout is already rolling out here into the center, where he's setting up multiple outposts. Meanwhile, spears. Why are the spears and why are the knights here? Why is anyone back here? Avely, I don't know. These knights haven't really done anything. Feels like most nobility at the time, they just exist to exist. Yeah, we had knights because knights. But really just feeling useless. Like, I don't... Like, what? One knight found value against double lance that was low health, and that's mainly because SortOf mismicroed him. But since then, like, there's no bang for buck. So I think this is just the switch up. Like, crossbows have to come out here, right? Like, if you don't play crossbows, are you not just discounting your own hand? Right now, it's only man-at-arms. There we go. Crossbows in the mix as well. But he does still have to answer the mangonels. This was my worry. Like, I kind of understood the Knights play and the stables if he wanted to snipe out the siege. But because he hasn't ramped up the stable production and because he hasn't used the cavalry well, now I feel like he gets into a slog where he loses. Because if you get into this bogged-down, slow fight, your opponent has siege creep. You do not. You need siege workshops, and even then, they get produced slowly. Meanwhile, your opponent can just build them out in the field. 2 sacred sites now capped. SortOf will be moving for the 3rd soon. Avely moving out, and it's going to be the keep drop here. That keep also functioning as a military production building could be his answer to getting Springles out. He's going to need him. Meanwhile, Springle is getting every shot it can out onto that villager line before it dies. And it's freebies because no textiles upgrade. Shame as well, if you had the textiles, then actually you'd have a lot more health on these, right? So you'd have 75 health, which means that the Springles wouldn't kill you because the Springle defense do 60 damage. So, a little bit of a mistrick. Cost him a few extra villagers, and I just always, I don't know, I feel like a lecturer just saying the same thing over and over again, right? Like, sacrifice 1 villager production and pay the price of 3 villagers to add 50% health to all villagers now and in perpetuity. Sounds pretty damn good when I say it like that, right? That's because it is. Especially if you ever intend to run your villagers out into no man's land, which is what both players are now doing. Treb's already being constructed, SortOf. Denies another outpost going up. Mangonel's getting a free shot there. Whoop. Nice little sidestep at the end there. Minimizes the damage somewhat. Has the monk to heal as well. Now, this keep should be somewhat tricky, right? Wrong. Because Avely still has no siege. No counter siege. Nothing to protect him still. No siege workshop in his base. No siege production out of the keep. He's finally going for it now, but he's going for the counterweight trebuchet instead of the spirals that he desperately needs. That means that SortOf can escalate quickly here. In the meantime, he's going to burn his way through the palisades. I don't know. Is one villager going to be good enough here? With it being on fire, I don't think it can. However, the spears are going to buy enough time with that to move around and force him away. So SortOf has to retreat. The bigger issue I see is Avely, like, he's given himself some central control now, but he needs a way to shift out from here. And right now, he doesn't actually have the siege answer. And I feel like this has been the case for the last several minutes, and it's going to continue to be the case. Like, yes, you have trebs, and trebs are great, and I love having trebs because I'm England. But you're playing against the Mongols. They will break you quicker with a much bigger siege force, as we're seeing start to emerge. And this might at least be worthwhile if it wasn't for the fact that SortOf has a villager on the front able to repair any damage your treb does in this siege-on-siege engagement. And 2 villages is not going to achieve the same level of repairs. The traction trebuchet count now goes up to 3. This keeps slowly going down. Now remember, these traction trebs, less impressive, as you can see on the numbers there. Doing a lot less bonus damage, but also having less range. As a result, also being a little bit cheaper, though. At the 400 wood, 150 gold, compared to the 500 wood, 250 gold. Don't know if it really feels like it's worth it from that perspective alone, but the balance is meant to be that traction trebuchets can be built in mass in the field. That's why that small difference justifies the huge difference in damage and stats. It's kind of crazy, actually, because if there's any other types of trebs here, like, this would be dead, right? Like, if we were talking about a player with counterweight trebuchets, we'd be saying, yeah, this keep is dead. But traction trebuchets just don't really cut it. And it's taking so long to get through this. In the meantime, the raid on the north! Avely, did he actually get the... No. He got a few of the villagers. I don't think he got all of them, though. Instead, his army's going to get cleaned up. Man-at-arms chased onto. I say he got some. I think he got maybe 6, 7, possibly more here. The garrison wasn't good enough. SortOf peeled the rest back. We got distracted by the fight in the south, similarly to SortOf. But in the end, Avely's force will be cleaned up. And a lot of them seem to be drunkenly trying to fight the same enemy. Doesn't work in a choke point, my friends. And after that, what is the count at? Ouch! Avely down to 33! SortOf is escalating. This is a problem. He's in now with the mangonels, with everything under the keep. To deny the repairs from coming out. The boiling oil is irrelevant. It won't be around long enough to burn them all. And that's the 4th district gone. Avely, this map is about to get incredibly small. And it's all because he throws away his force to the north. It's such a bait of yourself to think that it's worth it to go onto this gold vein to snipe out a few villages while sacrificing your whole extension on the south side. Avely made a critical error here. He needed this extension more than he needed to deny the one to the north, because right now he's draining himself dry. He's barely got any gold left in the back of his base. His tree lines are running out alongside his hairline, and the reason this is a concern is because if you didn't now have to double down to replace that force you just lost, you'd already be in Imperial Age. You'd already be able to afford it. But now you have to mash the keys as quickly as possible to produce a new standing army of man-at-arms, and each of those cost a bulky amount of food and a decent amount of gold. And SortOf, he has his timing now. Because Avely gave it to him, now all of a sudden SortOf can just move forward, enclose the base, and start to siege through. And because you never sniped out these trebs, the number is escalating. He's reaching the critical mass required to breach quickly. Even more buildings quickly falling here. And Avely, this keep is not going to protect him long. Trying to gather as much stone as he can. If he can at least get all of this, it's like, okay, the keep delays him and it's paid for itself because I gained all the stone from the outcropping. But the issue right now is still... he's not getting these siege weapons. He doesn't have the answer. If you don't want to go siege, you need to be going for horsemen. You need horsemen scout. You need anything that can gap close and kill off the siege. Because if you look at the numbers for SortOf right now, man-at-arms don't get bonus damage against any cavalry you throw. Only a few spearmen here. It's mainly siege, right? 7 spirals, 3 mangonels, 4 traction trebuchets. A contingent of 15 to 20 horsemen would clean most of this up. And if you do that, you get the breathing room required for your Imperial Age timing. The issue is because he had to replace that man-at-arms army, he spent so much in doing so, he's not floating enough food anymore. He can't afford a transition right now. With limited wood as well, it feels like a Hail Mary to ask him to drop 6 or 7 stables, but really you need a Hail Mary now. This is not it. Once again, baited in by the Gold Vein, runs the entire man-at-arms battalion out. And once again, they are going to be wiped. And Avely, once again, is going to sacrifice that Imperial Age timing. If it feels like I'm saying once again a lot, it's because I am. Because we've been here time and time again. No, this is just getting frustrating. Keeps going to go down. Paid 50 resources to do it as well. Not bad, not bad. 5 trebs now. Won't take long to breach everything. And SortOf, ironically enough, Avely sacrifices his Imperial Age timing multiple times, but SortOf has it available. He's underway. He'll ride in. The tree line. He exposed himself. Avely. Uh-oh. Just like in real life, when you expose yourself, there is a fine to pay. As he'll be forced off the wood line. A few of them killed off. This is getting dangerous. This Mangonel, oh my god, this Mangonel denies everything. Avely, right now, wood is what he worships. And I'm not talking about those dodgy websites you open up and say, I wish mine was that big. I'm talking about the resource wood here. And he has barely any left. He has a surplus of 1.3k, but barely any trees to bolster that further with. And these Mangonels, with their positioning, completely denies anything from Avely. And Avely, due to the fact he still does not have a cavalry composition in his army, he has no way of gap closing on these Magos quick. These Magos can do heavy damage, and they're doing exactly that. They'll roll back. Yam able to disengage quicker. A lot of squirrels here to start sniping. Avely looking desperate. Man-at-arms quickly block them out from reaching their targets. One Mangonel is down, though. Second one forward before it can be constructed. Fire coming on the side. Avely about to lose the front line again. And afterwards, you have to question what is next, because SortOf has a hard standing army of hard men themselves. The Springles, the Trebs, everything ready to throw itself at Avely's base as Avely looks to throw this game away. Man-at-arms for the time being are holding. More reinforcements arriving with SortOf, but these Springles, despite the fact they only do 30 damage, they are slowly sniping down all these Man-at-arms. You can see the Man-at-arms now fixated with the Trebuchet, so the Trebuchet being a Trebuchet trying to get rid of the TC. All of that, and for what, Avely? He manages to garner 2k surplus, but this is the issue. Avely, his macro is off. He's still not escalating his military district, and he's 2 landmarks down. 1 left to go, and that is a fragile state to find yourself in. Man-at-arms trying to pressure onto the Trebs. Trebs getting paid. Even if they die, they say, we're worth it, mate. The amount of buildings we've raised to the ground, we paid for ourselves. And this keep, this is a desperation play. Avely, if this doesn't go up, he might just wave the white flag. And just a few Man-at-arms are going to deny him the Sprills as well. Still, no textiles upgrade. Means that he cannot construct the keep quick enough. And with so many villagers dead, with you being so far in the hole, what's one more throwaway? As Avely, he finally has done it. He's finally saved what he needs for Imperial Age, but he can no longer access it. For if he does, he waves the flag and invites SortOf into his base. And while both of these sides might have a golden aura about them, SortOf is the golden boy right now. As this oppressive style of Mongols is reigning supreme, the elite Lancers are just turning these lads into mincemeat. And here we go, Berkshire Palace being rushed up, but Avely, I have my doubts, my friend. I am a fan, but I'm not a fan of the timing on this. Even if you complete the Berkshire Palace, how much time can it buy? And to what end? Because the Trebuchets are about to start rebuilding. SortOf, he just needs to sort his gold, which is about to happen as well with this many people working on the step readout. And then it's going to be 4, 5, 6 Trebs again, and rinse repeat of what happened before. Lancers are in, and everything now grind to a halt. This is the weakness when you tech up like this. When your opponent is right in your base and you choose to make this play, you essentially yell, I am weak. When really you want to yell, I am Avely. but he doesn't get a chance to do so. SortOf will open this series up with a win. Let's see if Avely is feeling a little bit spicy, or if SortOf is just going to come in and be a natural-born predator in the Age of Empires 4 Ocean. Here we go. So, game number 2. Avely, his tournament life on the line. Remember, folks, this is redemption bracket. This is loser's bracket, if we want to use the true term, all right? These are the people who aren't big wieners, all right? Wait, no, they're not big winners, they're big wieners. So instead, they're having to slog it out here. They get beaten in this series. Boom. Done. Out for round 1. Sitting on your hands until round 2 comes back around. And yes, that sounds wonderful, doesn't it? You can just come back another week. But remember that you gain points depending on your placement in each of these. So every single one matters, because those points will lead you through to being able to qualify for the elite playoffs, as well as deciding how much bank you make at the end of this. And, you know, if you really want to take the money out of Pessy's pocket, you got to work your ass off, show some consistency, and more importantly, show some improvement. And I need to see that improvement, because Avely, game 1 felt very static. Very stagnant, in fact. This felt like people who played England, I'd say November, October. No, month's wrong way. November, December. My brain, I'm ill, I'm sorry. November, December time, where they just kind of went in for this change of pace. So like, English longbow's boring, maybe there's a different strategy, and they just chill back and they castle up, then the Imperial up. They'd even stonewall themselves in, something that Avely didn't do. Not that it would have changed anything. And then they just kind of arrived at this what now point. That's the issue I see. If the English don't have any presence, any pressure, they do tend to reach a what now point. Unless they're playing against someone like me who just is crap at the game and won't manage to match your timings. But at a high level, players will see it and exploit to understand the English, like, in theory, should have some leverage in the late game, but it's usually not realized because the current meta relies heavily around siege. Unless you built 10 keeps, you're not building enough siege quick enough against the Abbasids and the Mongols. And that's my worry here. Avely does have an opportunity to press into SortOf early. The Chinese are actually a phenomenal civ at early feudal age aggression. In fact, I think that's where the upcoming strengths are going to be. A lot of players have already started to identify this with the Zhuge Nu Ram Rush. It's a very potent build, and honestly, if you were to go spamming it on the leaderboards now, you'd probably be positive on the win rate percentage. But the issue is that if he doesn't choose the strategy, if he goes longer, he is up against the Abbasids. And the Abbasids have a beautiful ability to just overwhelm you, out-snowball you, essentially, in that castle age, relying upon siege. So I feel like this game has similar win conditions on both sides to game number 1. And my concern is that with Avely being a more defensive player who likes to boom up a little, he might bait himself into a castle age timing when really his win condition is feudal. But now just going out on the mill though, Juicy onto the deer. He didn't get the golden spawn actually. Wait, what? Avely, no. Oh, this is so inefficient. So Avely, he built the mill, and I don't think he scouted out the deer initially. He thought they may be further south, so instead he just wasted an extra 50 wood for nothing. Oh, it's more than that. It's actually so much more than that. So what he actually done here, he drops the mill here originally. Obviously, you know, it's a short distance, so you can maybe get wheelbarrow quicker, but that doesn't matter because he chose to do wheelbarrow here. The reason he done this mill, I think he baited himself with the lumber camp. When he dropped this lumber camp and saw the mill location, he realized that he could place an Imperial Academy here, meaning he'd need only 2 Imperial officials instead of 3 at an earlier point to be able to not only supervise the buildings, but also drop off taxes. But then he realized that the deer were nowhere nearby and chooses to go for this instead. I wonder if this is also because he now wants to go into the Barbican of the Sun Drop. That would make more sense to me. Like, the berry play makes more sense if you're going Imperial Academy. The deer play makes more sense if you're looking for a rush game. So this actually might not be too bad. I think dropping the mill now is, like, bad, but it's not going to, like, crucify you. Not going to, like, hang you up here. We won't string you up. Avely, with this play, opens up options aggressively at an earlier point. By the way, the reason I'm harping on about this mill and, like, you know, nitpicking it, like, you can say, oh, he can go back for the berries later, but yet, what's the point in the mill now, though, right? In what world do you need the mill first? Because you spent 50 wood, and early game resources matter a lot for your timings, for everything, right? Like, remember what I talk about, like, resource being exponential investments. They, you know, these small quantities matter less later on the game. They matter a lot now. But then also, you had the idle time of building this mill, and then the idle time of running over to this new mill location. So that's a lot of lost efficiency early on for Avely. Meanwhile, in SortOf's economy, he builds a mill. Hasn't used it just yet as is on the sheep, but he can easily move on to it at any point. And he's already moved on to the stone. And this is where the ripple effect happens. And also the Barbican of Sun's so defensively located. Now, Avely still has the option to go back for the Imperial Academy, and the timing might link up with when he moves across the berries. But this play is less popular right now. The Barbican, like, you don't really drop the barbecue in your own base. Now, despite popular belief, I know how most people, like, when they want to have a barbecue, they do it in their own backyard. Really, in this matchup with this type of map, I'd say the play is to drop, just have a barbecue in your neighbor's base. Right on the edge here. That would have been an ideal play because SortOf hasn't built any military force. And also, Avely has scouted this out. So the issue with this Barbican of Sun is, like, for a start, there are ways around. Like, we can actually see this. This is like the battle for Thermopylae, right? There's a little pass that you can sneak by on the side, come around the back of the Spartans. But also, usually, like, you want to be going for either Barbican of Sun first if you're rushing, or Imperial Academy first. And then Barbican of Sun, like, you have, you know, you don't really care as much because you already got the economical benefits. So overall, like, this feels a little bit dated again out of Avely. It's a little bit concerning, but once again, like I said, not unrecoverable. I think the win condition is still going into Imperial Academy and dropping Jignu. Although right now, with the amount he's floating, it looks like he might be targeting a fast castle. Fast castle can work, but it is a little bit dicey. Mainly because against the Abbasid player, I feel like your timing isn't going to be good enough to stop him from accessing castle himself. And he's already going to be eco-booming, as we can see. The bigger issue as well is, like, when you're up against the Abbasids, they tend to just kind of catch you off guard at the moment, I feel like, a lot of the time. Like, people don't expect the castle stage timers they're achieving with the TC boom. And the issue is, like, if you're playing for a fast castle, your strength is in that you get access, or it used to be for the Chinese, you used to get access to your siege. You don't ramp up as quickly as you used to. You can still actually boost the Palace Guard, which can be good. But it doesn't mean you're going to be chipping away at your opponent. I feel like now you've put yourself in a situation where you're in a race to reach a critical mass of Palace Guard to kill villages off quicker than can be produced. And because SortOf is going for multi-TCs, he can somewhat address this. And with maybe camel archers or just throwaway spears, he can slowly kill off those Palace Guard. And there it is, the clock tower being built. Now, the issue with the clock tower build, it used to be dominant. It used to be the way Chinese players always played the game. Things have changed because you can no longer supervise the structure. You cannot give it the 300% production speed that you can on normal buildings. And this is a big deal. Because if you're relying on this astronomical clock tower to get you the siege to kill your opponent now, it's going to take you 3 times longer. Your only option is to build a siege workshop instead. And if you do that in this situation, because you chose to go for a quick castle as opposed to getting the Imperial Academy, you don't really have the economy to sustain continuous production out of a siege workshop that is functioning as free. We'll see if it works out, though. I feel like SortOf's got a good read on this. Yeah, he's already walled himself in. So there's no easy access. In fact, if he walls all the way along, I feel like Avely's timing is going to be ruined here. Avely right now, he could choose to go back for the Song Dynasty to give himself some scalability, but I think he understands that at this stage, the window's kind of closed because you're playing against the Abbasids and they haven't shown any troops, so they're clearly multi-TC. And considering in the next half a minute they won't be castle, if you don't get that ping, from Avely's perspective, he understands that going Song Dynasty now is surrendering any leverage he has. The issue is, look what SortOf's done. This is what I was talking about, the creep-up factor. You just crack Castle Age, you're pushing out your initial units. Look at SortOf's numbers. He's about to have it as well. As long as he completes these walls, and he'll be able to do so, because one wolf will not stop him. Oh, just in time. One tap away from bringing that wall down. That would have been big. That would have allowed him to breach, kill off a few villagers, and then run rampant. But instead, SortOf now get the breathing room. Needs a minute and a half. But you notice he's double walling. I love this from SortOf. He extends far enough out. He risks it for the biscuit. And he's going to get not only the biscuit, but the entire box full. Hello, Timmy. Timmy, you're drunk. Timmy. No one can attack me now. Bit of a weird position to put him in. I'm not really sure if SortOf is playing AoE or playing a bridge constructor right now. Because he has very good foundations if these were bridges, but he's still got an issue about the center. The cool thing he can do, by the way, is once this wall gets low on health, he can actually just gate it. This is, in theory, actually a really cool play, by the way. So I realize what SortOf is thinking here. The logic is that if I put up these secondary support walls, my opponent won't attack the support walls on the outside because it'll take 2 wall burn downs, which means he has to prioritize attacks in the center, which means that your villagers will always be able to repair. There's no idle time on them. It's actually quite big brain, to be honest. Whether it's worth it long term, I'm not sure, especially if you start walling in your own villagers. Hey, I mean, I guess in that situation, all they can do is repair. But, like, overall, it's forced an awkward situation where Avely will never be able to breach. Because usually you could at least split up and burn 2 sides. And, like, your opponent will be Benny Hillsing back and forth. But instead, SortOf can optimize. He requires less villages to achieve the same repair rate. And you have no choice but to focus fire on one location at a time. And it is buying much needed time. SortOf, the tech up is about to complete. Avely has gone in for the monastery. We know this guy really loves his relics. I'm starting to think that he actually might have been Gollum in a previous life. The bigger issue is that you're about to get aggressed. Crossbows are being prepped. You've shown your hand. You've only shown Palace Guard, and I don't think Avely's prepped anything else. No. No siege. No other military building. It is only Palace Guard right now. He will at least supervise onto the monks, so he's getting them out pretty damn quick. But the concern here is, like, you're about to get answered. And also, ooh, nice breach. Wanted to break through, but, like, it's superfluous damage, right? These Palace Guard don't last long enough in such a small quantity, and also now crossbows out in the field ready to address you. Not to mention the fact that if you lose this initial fight in the center, remember what we said about the siege warfare? China doesn't dominate it anymore, the Abbasid matchup. The Abbasids can build out in the field, and China cannot supervise this clock tower. And it's hard to be able to, at this stage, afford the 300 wood necessary to build a siege workshop. And that means that now, SortOf's not only going to have the counter to what his opponent is pushing out, he's going to have the answer to what's coming next. And that's actually the crippling detail as well. Is like, Avely is spotted as well. So SortOf sees a lot of this. Now he goes back for the Imperial Academy. This is very late at the 12-minute mark. And make no mistake, folks, this is my strategy didn't work, and now I need to pivot. So Avely is falling back for the greed. Possibly, maybe it's unfair to say, maybe he had this in mind to begin with, but it does feel a little bit suboptimal. Why not go for the Imperial Academy sooner? Because your rush into Castle didn't work. Clearly the intent was to breach with Palace Guard and raid, but SortOf was a quick reactor to this. He instantly walled in and denied this just before it could come through. And it does feel like now this is the knee-jerk reaction where Avely's like, okay, I know this game's going to last long. I need to scale, and I need to do it quickly. And he's right to think that way. The relics are going to help somewhat, but the eco differential is really what's stinging him. Avely currently, I think, 13 eco units behind his opponent. Oh, the Palace Guard, they won't get in. And this is all because Avely raided in before with those 2 Palace Guard. I'm pretty sure they came around this side, so SortOf obviously got poked and prodded, reacts to it, pads himself this time around, and Avely, he's got to be frustrated by this. SortOf will begin to repair. He can delay this long enough. He can pull the crossbows across. They're already on their way. And it's just a matter of buying time right now. And the concern is that SortOf isn't running out of resources anytime soon. Right? Like, his gold, I think, is his limiting factor because he hasn't moved out for new ones yet, and this one's down to 1.6k. But he's got plenty of wood, decent amount of stone, enough to drop a keep, and that's going to give him some control when he moves out of his base. It really does feel like Avely is missing siege in his components, in his composition, rather. And he goes for the second TC. Wow. Avely's really looking to bounce back. Right now, Avely is sitting on a pair of 8s, and he's trying to bluff his opponent off a pair of jacks. Right? Like, both of them are kind of in a, I don't feel like I can make a decisive move to attack you right now stage. But what he's relying on is the fact that because he's shown a lot of strength so far through this game, SortOf is going to play more defensive with even more walling. And he's right in thinking this, because so far he's seen nothing else. But should SortOf at any stage spot this multi-TC, which he just did, he might choose to go on the aggressive, and Avely will be in trouble. And it looks like he's doing that as well. Palisade gate's being built. Scout will be sniped in the end. Relics are being gathered up. But your greed has been shown. all because you never stopped this scout, all because you never walled this off, all because he's been sitting here time and time again for the last I don't know how many minutes. It means that SortOf knows what he needs to do next. And he needs to move out. That's why they're on the go. Man-at-arms and crossbows moving out right now. Pascal trying to breach on the south side, but SortOf's going to wrap round to clean them up first. Doesn't want to have any frustrating backstab later on in the engagements. And I wouldn't be surprised if we're heading towards a keep drop as well. And yeah, we are. It's already underway. Sacred Site is going to be covered in the center, and that's a staging point to move into Avely's base. The wraparound. Pascal, just they break the wall. They have to back away. Luckily for them, they move much quicker than Man-at-Arms. And SortOf, he's got to stop. He can't be baited by this. He needs to go. This is his timing right now. If he waits too long, if 4 or 5 minutes pass before he does anything, Avely's eco will recover. It'll actually catch up and exceed because this isn't 2 TCs on TCs anymore. This is 2 TCs of the Abbasids versus 2 Chinese TCs with a buffered 35% reduction time in villager production. Which means that right now, you're actually floating 2.8 TCs versus 2. And Sprinkle defenses are coming out from Avely, so starting to layer himself. Villagers rushing out, but being sniped for free here. And the Sprinkles, I don't know how you see, just about over the top of that little divot hill. So many villagers pulled. SortOf has really invested in this now. Much more costly than he originally intended, though. And I think the reason he's confident to do this is he doesn't really expect his opponent's economy to be that strong. I'm starting to wonder if he even noticed the second TC with the scout. Surely SortOf, like the level of skill these lads play at, he would have seen it. But he doesn't care. He understands his win condition is now. He needs to breach, and he needs to breach soon. And because he has the keep down as a strong point, he can now start to establish siege with a safe fallback point right outside of Avely's base. Now, of course, the one weakness for the Abbasids is they cannot build into those trebs, which is why, yep, Siege Workshop goes down. SortOf looking to reach that timing quickly. Man-at-Arms will at least be chased away by the Palace Guard. A little bit of wiggle room for Avely, but Avely needs a way out. Wiggle room is good, but he needs a lot of breathing room soon. You can see the way he's extended his eco. Soon he's going to need to establish a lot of farmland, and thus need a lot of wood. In fact, right now, he's actually floating a ridiculous amount of gold without a marketplace. Oh, there it is at the back. Apologies. I think he's trying to establish for Imperial Age. Like, I think he's trying to stabilize for an Imperial Age timing. But you need to address this force first. You can see that SortOf is invested. He's even going to the Rams now. Meanwhile, south side, this is becoming efficient. At first, it was bad as SortOf was just losing troops, but now he's forcing these Pass Guard all the way out. And well, the Monks will try to heal, but a few Pass Guard are going to die. The Man-at-Arms are going to be cleaned up. The Pass Guard are now out of position. And if you look back at Avely's base, he doesn't really have much of a standing army outside those lads. The Rams, this is buying time for it. Sprinkles being built, Lancers now coming as well. Lancers that will flood through because Avely, unlike SortOf, never walled himself in. This doesn't count. If you put a wall across the center, I give it to you. But Avely, this technically is not walling yourself in. More like walling yourself out. And now Nest Bees, the one hope for Avely, maybe saving grace. The issue is the Sprinkle count that's going to start coming out from SortOf soon. The Lancers are wrapping around, but Avely, there's still no transition. It's just Palace Guard. He has got the Supervise onto the Siege Workshop now, but that means that each of these units are less cost efficient, right? Like, he's not getting the extra 50% health when he pushes them out of here. But he has to for the Trebs because he needs them right now. He needs to keep gone, and he needs it right now, right this second, because he has to understand that behind this, a force is building up. He can see it, in fact. He knows the Rams are starting to escalate. He has no way to reach them. The Lancers are in. Palace Guard will chase them down. But they're drawing the attention, and SortOf, unlike the Man-at-Arms, these lads can actually draw a lot more attention for a lot longer because they can actually run away. And they will run right round the back to where there is an idle economy line, or exposed economy line, rather, for Avely. It's going to be idle soon when it's running away, though. Avely, he's still not escalating. Well, at least not quick enough. He's notably behind SortOf on the count still. Oh, no! SortOf, he wasn't looking. Similar to us, he looked away for a second, and Avely got on the other side of him. A lot of damage done, so Lancer Battalion will not be able to snipe out a bunch of villagers back here, and new walls going down. So Avely, he will at least layer himself on the outskirts so he can play greedy on these pocket economies. But he still hasn't answered the issue in the center, and the issue is on its way in. Spirals roll across the top of the hill, looking to snipe out on their counterpart as well as the Nesta Bees. Nesta Bees distracted by the marching from the Man-at-Arms. Man-at-Arms overwhelming the siege line, and this is the issue. Avely, he got baited out of position. The Palace Guard were not here to hold the choke points, and it means the whole siege army is going to fall. SortOf baits him away. Perfectly done, and instantly, the moment he smells weakness, he pounces. He will pounce on all these Nesta Bees, sniping them out. Villagers going to give those emergency repairs over. Ram has got through the keep though, and SortOf's like, don't worry, buddy. I'm going to replace what was lost here with one of my own. The crossbow's now looking somewhat unanswered. Only one Nesta Bees can really save Avely, and one is not going to be good enough. And this front line exposed, multiple military production builds not able to actually get units out safely anymore. A keep knocking at your front door, and Rams about to knock down your doors as they move on to the Barb of the Sun. Avely, how the numbers looking right now. It's the food issue right now, isn't it? Yes, the food is drained up quick. He's on the berries now to try and sustain himself. But you can see he's stuck in a fragile state, transitioning to farmlands, and he has got many places to put them safely. And that's a problem. If SortOf continues to raid, if he gets a few more lancers and wraps around the back, he's going to snipe out a bunch of these farmers working on the food. And I don't know if Avely can survive past that. Like, right now, he needs a strong front line. I don't think that's a strong front line, though. 50 health villagers trying to shiv lancers. Talk about giving value. Avely, he's looking a bit lost now. And this is all without Mangonels. Like, this could be so much worse for you. Yet it still feels like it can't get much worse. SortOf is so far behind. So far ahead, rather. Like, SortOf up at 95 eco. Meanwhile, Avely down at 59. And so many buildings being burnt as well. And Avely, like, you know, he's not going to call GG in this situation because obviously this is match point. But you wonder, if he had a third game available to him, would he just say, yeah, go next? Because right now, there's nothing left. His recovery point's been missed. His siege workshop can't afford it. His wood lines are going to drain up soon. One of them is already being exposed. Gold is also problematic right now. Like, if we look at the gold situation, it's just this vein back here, but he needs to be gathering food there. And he can't afford the idle villages, which means his gold is about to go to zero. You can see down to 500, this is all passive gold. Passive gold that's going to disappear as soon as the Rams eyeball up that monastery. And these villagers giving their life to keep B alive. Now, I know B, if we talk about the player, very high skill, very worth defending, but one nest of bees is not the same as the player. Avely seems to be worshipping like it is, though. And it's going to cost him dearly. Although the Nesta Bees will exploit this to snipe out a bunch of the MAA, the Rams are still unaddressed. You've got no standing army and no way of easily replacing what was lost. And SortOf, he'll just keep the push going. Military count similar. But eco count shrinking further and further every time you have to pull a dozen villagers over to repair these Nesta Bees. And there it is. The Ram is going to knock down the monastery. That passive goal is going to be gone. And all of a sudden, Avely is going to be drained dry, unable to replace what is lost. As not only do his siege rely on gold, so do these Palace Guard. And even Mangonels now. Not even Spriggles needed. Doesn't even care right now. It just feels trivial. So much of the base is broken and so little room left. This is always the issue outside. If you give over a little bit of ground, there's nowhere left to go. And you can feel it, right? Like, where do you rebuild your base? To the south here? Well, that exposes your eco. Do you build it behind your eco? Or where you can extend more farms? Like, there's no good option right now. This stone wall gives him a little bit of grace on the south side, but overall, it's just not enough. And this makes it even worse. There it is. The medical center is such an efficient research when you keep spamming like this. Especially after you get the 30% research reduction cost. Like, it's so efficient. Able to heal up not just any infantry, cavalry, whatever it may be, even heal siege weapons. Allowing you to trade at range. The Lancers just sticking on top of Mangonels, getting the shots out as well. Heavy damage being done as the Nesta Bees just draws circles around. The only thing you can do is go for a wall-long play. A hope, a prayer maybe, but SortOf quick to react, shifts away. Won't give it over. And Spiral's in the field for one side, and that side is not Avely, which means now his Nesta Bees have had their fun, but it's time for them to go back to the hive. as they'll be swatted away by SortOf. With the Skrill's and the Lancers man-at-arms in tow as well, everything is crumbling, and Avely looks all but done with this game, done with this series, and looking to be knocked out of round 1 as SortOf continues his 2-0 streak in the lower bracket. Woo! SortOf is looking vicious. That was really well played once again. Like, Avely, I think there is a lot of leeway being given to SortOf in these games. We said about it in game 1, like maybe not playing to England's strengths and not hiding his hand. And we kind of saw it again in game 2. Like, I think I highlighted an early point. Avely had these kind of suboptimal elements in his economy. Step 1, that mill made no sense. You can try to argue it for me. I think I saw someone in the chat. Yeah, so maybe he's saving safe berries for later. Possibly, but why build it then, right? I think he got baited by the Imperial Academy, which isn't even a bait, but he sees it as a bait when he switches over for the Barbaing Sun instead. I think he could have went for an Imperial Academy here. He would have been safe, content, and he would have scaled his economy. The brilliant thing as well is actually, by just getting the Imperial Academy, you can then potentially drop a Barbaing Sun, or you can go for the Barbaing Sun first in your opponent's base, and it scales you naturally. When your opponent has 2 TCs, you've almost got 2 TCs versus worth because you've got your hands. There it is. Always ruining my analysis.
Tookie, I'm here to ruin your analysis.
I want to say thanks, but I also want to say screw you. Screw you and thanks. Thank you. Nah, I just do this on purpose. I get upset so I can steal more of his money. But thank you. But no, so like the crazy part about this is that actually Avely had the right idea when he built the Imperial Academy. He didn't need to build the Barbaing Sun. He wasn't going to be pressured. You only build a Barbaing Sun like that if your opponent is going to aggress you early on. And because you have scout and vision in their base, you know they're not going to aggress you early on. Before even getting into this discussion about the fact they're playing as the Abbasids, so they're not going to aggress you early on, right? Like everything about this opening from Avely, like it feels discombobulated between the mill, the Barbaing Sun. I think he put himself vastly behind where he should have been, and it meant that he couldn't even think or even dream. Thank you for the subs. Of going ruining this analysis. Thank you very much, Resist. I appreciate it. But he couldn't even reach this power spike timing of a feudal age ram rush as the Chinese. I feel like he missed all of his like disembark points where he would have been strongest, and he chose to invest in like, I don't know, 3-month-old stale castle age meta because it's just not the same for the Chinese anymore, especially in this matchup, as we clearly saw. I got to the end, and now I'm going to take your money and wipe my ass with it. Okay, actually, I don't get that much.